forces, but leave him to me.
Here I am, Skeletor.
He-Man! Skeletor is getting away!
But Castle Grayskull is safe with us.
Nothing's safe while Skeletor is out there.
I have the power!
We are talking about Power of Grayskull, the definitive history of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. This is a documentary directed and written by Randall Lobb and Robert McCullum. And this chronicles essentially He-Man right from its inception, right up to modern day-ish. It's made in 2017, and it's really a look at all facets of the obviously the toy line, the cartoon, the movie, etc. So obviously it starts off with the creation of He-Man, and ultimately what that span out of, which was obviously kind of like the boom of the kind of the Star Wars toys. It's kind of you know, why it was created with kind of a Conan sort of style aesthetic, etc. And then going into the mini comics, then you basically have you know, interviews with people who were involved with the kind of the original sort of 80s cartoon show, and ultimately how they expanded upon the lore and kind of wanted to kind of take it into a more story-driven product. And really, this was, you know, the way that these this was marketed to kids. This was the marketing essentially for selling the figures, and it kind of goes beyond that. Goes to the art of He-Man. It goes right up to the kind of the New Adventures of He-Man, which is kind of the later version, to the live-action film that stars Dolph Lundgren, and right up to the kind of the 2002 kind of reboot, and then really up to the kind of the more modern kind of like collecting by the sort of Four Horsemen, which is ultimately where we kind of leave it in kind of 2007, where this was made. Now, I was a big He-Man fan, and you know, I still have some of the kind of like the Funko Pops and things like that. I don't really collect merchandise and stuff these days, to be honest with you, but I was a big He-Man fan, and I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for the franchise. So I was, you know, happy to kind of obviously watch this documentary. Now, some of this stuff I kind of knew. What I liked about this, obviously, you have interviews with pretty much everyone that was involved, right from the people who worked at Mattel. You have people involved in, you know, from the production of the cartoon, voice actors. You have them, the artists who draw the kind of the mini comics. You've got interviews with like Dolph Lundgren, Frank Langella, obviously involved in the live action movie, etc. So it really kind of covers all of, well, the majority of bases. We'll come on to a couple of negatives I feel was missing in this franchise, and it's obviously a fascinating. It's very kind of rose tinted, but obviously I think it certainly for a business point of view, and I feel this was this area where this documentary absolutely shines. It's looking at the business aspect of Masters of the Universe. You know, why it was created, what drove those business decisions into creating certain kind of like, you know, the scale of the figure and things like that, the weapons. So it's a fascinating look at some of the decisions that were made on a business level rather than through a creative level, and then it kind of actually, that was what happened first, and it was kind of the creative side of it actually came a little later in regards to that the concepts are really blank slates initially, and the kind of, it was expanded upon with kind of later lore. So there's a lot of detail into regards to, like I said, the business aspects, the marketing, the kind of the selling of it. There's a clips of kind of retro adverts. There's footage of kind of toys. We have a couple of collectors here who have kind of quite, you know, vast collections. A couple of James Etox in it, who's a He-Man, you know, historian. So a pretty in-depth look. I will say, I mean, I felt there were some elements missing personally. A couple of things I felt like were missing. There was no mention of the kind of the music in the kind of the TV show, which to me was kind of a big part of it. I felt that was kind of, this wasn't mentioned. The voice actors, certainly with the original cartoon show, again, there wasn't a lot of footage with them. I did feel that some of the kind of the interviews kind of repeated themselves, certainly in regards to some of the kind of the more business aspect. I felt we were kind of hearing the same things a lot over, if that makes sense. And one thing I felt that was missing, I would have liked to have a little bit more in depth to the characters themselves. I mean, we get a reasonable amount with He-Man himself and She-Ra, but we don't really ever kind of talk about the decisions to make certain characters. You know, what was the decision to make Mer-Man, for example, and his kind of Trap Jaw and things like that. It was just, they were just there. There was given no kind of history about how these characters were designed and where they kind of came from, which I would have liked about the kind of the idea about the you know, yeah, we get He-Man, we get She-Ra, but and maybe a little bit of Skeletor. But other than that, I felt like I would have liked to have understood the inspiration for certain characters, and then obviously how they kind of came up with their kind of the character history and profiles. None of that's in there. So I think it's a very, very good documentary in regards to the kind of the business sense of it. So if that's what you're interested in, and you're interested in the kind of the business side of a creative property, this documentary is perfect for you. But if you're wanting a documentary which is going to give you kind of, I mean, there are some that like I said, there's a few kind of, there's a bit of animation that I'd never seen before. There's a few kind of retro kind of toy ads that kind of, we see some like the original drawing and stuff, which is all quite fun. But I didn't feel there was maybe quite enough focus on the creative outright, really, rather than the business kind of side of stuff. For me personally, I mean, that more could be a personal taste, but to me, I wouldn't say this was definitive. I would say it's very much a business kind of documentary, and a very well made one with kind of interesting interviews, lots of kind of archive footage and kind of, you know, Lou Scheimer and stuff like that. You know, some pre-recorded stuff from him. So that stuff was all great. But I don't know if I'd go as far as say it really is a definitive look, because I do feel there was some stuff, you know, missing. Even small stuff I would have appreciated, that kind of like, it almost, I think, let me put it like this. So I feel this is kind of telling you like you really knew nothing about He-Man, when I feel people who are watching this probably know a reasonable amount already. And it's kind of stuff, oh, you know, why has He-Man got a moustache in the cartoon but not in the toy line? Never mentioned. It's small things like that. You know, maybe talk about, you know, how there was going to be a second live-action He-Man, which went on to become the Cyborg film with Van Damme. It's never mentioned. So I did feel there was some stuff that it just didn't go anywhere, basically. You know, it was just kind of missed out. Maybe some of the kind of the aspects that maybe shone a bit of a bad light on it. Who knows? But overall, I mean, it was for still a He-Man fan, I think it's a worthwhile watch. And it's certainly something that can keep the franchise and the fans going for it. I'll give it a 6 out of 10 for what it showed. I thought what it showed was very good, but I feel there were things that it could have shown a little bit more, and maybe stop kind of repeating itself, as I felt like it did just a little bit. So for me, I'll give this documentary a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.